Good evening, Dr. Michael McKee. Through his public defender making his intentions known, the 39-year-old suspect not fighting extradition to Ohio, where the body of McKee's ex-wife and her husband were found in the couple's Columbus, Ohio home last month.
Your name, sir, for the record? Michael McKee.
Wearing a yellow-colored prison jumpsuit and slippers, a sullen Michael McKee facing Judge Donald Shriver this afternoon.
Mr. McKee believes that the most expeditious manner in which he may defend himself against the charges pending in Ohio and to plead not guilty would be to waive his right to an extradition hearing and to have a governor's warrant.
The suspect, with his head down during the hearing, not trying to make eye contact with anyone else in the courtroom. Charges against Dr. McKee upgraded to 2 counts of aggravated murder with premeditation.
I can't get closer to more than that.
Police found the couple's 2 young children alive and unharmed and said there were no signs of forced entry. 3 bullet casings were also recovered at the scene. Earlier this week, investigators released video asking for help identifying this person seen walking near the couple's home hours before their bodies were discovered. According to an affidavit, detectives caught up with McKee in Rockford, Illinois, connecting him to a vehicle seen on neighborhood surveillance in Columbus around the time of the murders.
A 4-year-old girl in the Columbus home, physically unharmed. In a statement released after McKee's arrest, the Tepe family thanking Columbus police for their work to find the suspect. Nothing can undo the devastating loss of 2 lives taken.
On a frozen December night in Columbus, Ohio, 2 lives were silenced in a home that should have been a sanctuary. Dr. Spencer Tepe, a dedicated dentist, and his wife Monique, the light of every room she entered, were found executed in their upstairs bedroom. But the most chilling detail wasn't the crime itself. It was what the police found just down the hall. As investigators followed a trail of digital footprints and deep-seated obsession, they realized the shadow in the alley wasn't a common thief, but a highly respected surgeon driven by a cold, calculated vengeance. This is the story of a love found, a life stolen, and the mask of a healer that hid the face of a killer. Welcome to Cold Trail Crimes. Today, we are dissecting one of the most haunting cases of premeditated malice in recent history, the murders of Spencer and Monique Tepe. This is a story of how a perfect life on paper can hide a deadly obsession. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support allows us to keep telling these stories and seeking justice for the victims. Now let's step onto the trail. December 30th, 2025. The 1400 block of North 4th Street in Columbus is draped in a deceptive, post-holiday stillness. It's the kind of quiet that usually suggests a family sleeping in, enjoying the final days of the year. But at the Athens Dental Depot, the silence from their lead dentist is deafening. Dr. Spencer Tepe is a man of meticulous habits. He doesn't just show up, he is the heartbeat of the practice. When his parking spot remains empty and his phone rings through to voicemail, a knot of unease tightens in the stomachs of his staff. That unease turns into a frantic 911 call. A welfare check is requested. When the Columbus Police Department arrives at the Tepe residence, there are no signs of a struggle on the exterior. No broken glass, no splintered wood. The house is locked tight, a fortress of suburban normalcy. But as the officers cross the threshold, the air changes. It's heavy. It's wrong. The officers move through the ground floor, their flashlights cutting through the dim morning light. Everything is in its place. It isn't until they reach the 2nd floor that the domestic dream shatters into a nightmare. In the master bedroom, they find Dr. Spencer Tepe and his wife, Monique. They are positioned in a way that suggests they never saw it coming, or if they did, they had no time to scream. They have been executed. The clinical precision of the wounds is the first detail that strikes the lead investigators. This wasn't a crime of passion fueled by a messy struggle. This was a surgical strike. But the most haunting sound in that house isn't the silence of the dead. It's the small, rhythmic breathing coming from the rooms nearby. In one bedroom, a 4-year-old. In another, a 1-year-old. They are physically unharmed, yet they have been trapped in this house of horrors for hours, perhaps even a full day, waiting for a mother and father who would never come to pick them up. As the children are carried out of the house wrapped in blankets, shielded from the carnage, The investigation shifts from a welfare check to a double homicide. Who were the Tepes? To the community, Spencer was the gentle giant of dentistry, a man who transformed smiles with a soft-spoken confidence. Monique was his vibrant counterpart, a woman who had spent years searching for a partner who truly deserved her. In her wedding videos, she is radiant, speaking about Spencer as her Lobster, the one person who finally brought peace to her life after years of emotional storms. But as the police begin to peel back the layers of Monique's past, they realize that while Spencer was her peace, her previous life had been defined by a very different kind of man, a man who possessed the same clinical precision seen at the crime scene, a man who, despite his status as a savior in the operating room, had a reputation for never letting go. The name Michael David McKee begins to echo through the precinct. He wasn't just Monique's ex-husband, he was a highly respected vascular surgeon. And as the detectives look at the precision of the shell casings left behind, they start to wonder if the hand that held the scalpel was the same hand that held the gun. The crime scene on North 4th Street presented a chilling paradox. There was no shattered glass, no missing jewelry, and the electronics remained untouched. This wasn't the chaotic work of a burglar interrupted. This was an execution. Lead detectives immediately noted the lack of forced entry, suggesting the killer either had a key or was someone Monique and Spencer trusted enough to let in, or perhaps someone who had meticulously studied their routines until he knew exactly when the back door would be vulnerable. As the forensics team processed the bedroom, the digital investigators were already fanning out through the neighborhood. They began the painstaking process of canvassing the wires, collecting footage from Ring doorbells and private security systems. Amidst the grainy, blue-tinted night footage, a pattern emerged. Between 2:01 a.m. and 5:00 a.m., a figure appears on a neighbor's camera. The person is dressed in a dark hoodie and light-colored pants, moving with a haunting, rhythmic calmness through the snow-covered alleyway behind the Tepe home. There is no frantic running, no glancing over the shoulder. This was the walk of a man on a mission. While the tech team followed the shadow, the boots on the ground were conducting interviews that would change the trajectory of the case. When the news of the tragedy reached Monique's family, there was no confusion, no list of potential enemies. Instead, there was a single, terrifyingly consistent name, Dr. Michael David McKee. Monique's brother, Rob Misley, and other close relatives didn't hesitate. They told police that they had been holding their breath for years, waiting for a day like this. To understand why, we have to look back to 2015. At that time, Monique was entering what many thought was a medical power couple marriage. Michael McKee was a star on the rise, a brilliant vascular surgeon whose hands saved lives on the operating table daily. But behind the closed doors of their upscale home, the scalpel-sharp intellect was used for something far darker. The marriage lasted only 2 years, ending in 2017, but the divorce was merely the end of the legal contract, not the end of the nightmare. The court documents described an amicable split, but the reality shared by those closest to Monique was a subterranean world of psychological warfare. Relatives testified that Monique lived in a state of high alert, a persistent, terrified hum that defined her daily life. McKee had allegedly threatened her life multiple times, using his position of power and intelligence to remind her that she could never truly escape him. He was a man who understood the fragility of the human body better than anyone, and he allegedly used that knowledge to keep her in a state of perpetual fear. The red flags weren't just waving, they were screaming. Investigators now had a motive rooted in deep-seated obsession and a suspect with the anatomical knowledge to carry out a precise double homicide. But having a name and a history wasn't enough for a conviction. They needed to bridge the 450-mile gap between McKee's clinical life in Illinois and the blood-stained snow of Columbus, Ohio. To the world outside the operating room, Dr. Michael David McKee was a success story. A 2014 graduate of the Ohio State University College of Medicine, he had risen to become a highly specialized vascular surgeon with licenses in Illinois and California. At OSF, St. Anthony Medical Center in Rockford, he was the man you wanted when the stakes were highest, a surgeon trained to operate with a steady hand, a cold focus, and a total detachment from the chaos of human emotion. But investigators were beginning to see a different side of that clinical detachment. This wasn't just a high-achieving doctor. It was a man who allegedly used his mastery of precision to plan a massacre. The breakthrough came through the lens of neighborhood security cameras. Police identified a suspicious vehicle arriving near the Tepe home shortly before the estimated time of the murders and departing shortly after. That car was linked directly to McKee. This was the moment the shadow in the alley was given a name and a set of keys. As the detectives mapped the geography of the crime, the realization of what occurred was chilling. McKee didn't just snap in a moment of local rage. He allegedly engaged in a grueling 450-mile round trip from Illinois to Columbus, Ohio. He drove through the night, committed the act, and then, in a display of sociopathic normalcy, drove back to Illinois. Just days later, he was back in his surgical scrubs at the hospital, treating patients like Stephen Miller, who later described the doctor as professional but introverted. To his colleagues, he was just another surgeon finishing a shift. To the police, he was a killer who had just completed a cross-state execution. On Saturday, January 10th, the manhunt reached its peak. Law enforcement descended on McKee's Lincoln Park condo in Chicago and his workplace in Rockford. When the Columbus Division of Police, led by Chief Elaine Bryant, searched his property, they found what they were looking for. Among a collection of firearms, investigators recovered a handgun. Initial ballistics analysis through the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, NIBIN, provided the smoking gun. The shell casings found in the Tepe bedroom, the very rounds that had ended the lives of a beloved dentist and his wife, matched the weapon found in the surgeon's possession. The same precision he used to save lives was now scientifically linked to the tool used to take them. On the morning of January 10, 2026, the double life of Dr. Michael David McKee came to a crashing halt. The scene played out with a cinematic irony that no scriptwriter could invent. McKee was intercepted in Rockford, Illinois, while heading to the very hospital where he was revered as a savior of lives. There was no high-speed chase, no dramatic standoff. The man who spent his days in sterile scrubs, performing intricate vascular surgeries, was pinned against his vehicle and forced into steel handcuffs. The juxtaposition was jarring. A man whose hands were insured for millions, hands trained to repair the most delicate vessels of the human heart, were now bound behind his back as he was processed for the most visceral of crimes. The news of the surgeon killer rippled through the medical community. How could a man who took an oath to do no harm travel hundreds of miles to commit the ultimate harm? But as the legal process began, the mask of the professional healer slipped further, revealing a void of emotion that was perhaps even more terrifying than the act itself. In the Winnebago County courtroom, the atmosphere was thick with a mixture of grief and disbelief. When McKee made his first appearance, the room expected to see a man broken by the weight of his accusations, or perhaps a man frantic to proclaim his innocence. Instead, they saw a statue. Dressed in a bright yellow inmate jumpsuit, McKee remained eerily expressionless. He didn't look at the cameras. He didn't look at the grieving families. With a chilling, clinical detachment, he waived his right to an extradition hearing, essentially clearing the path for his return to Ohio to face 2 counts of premeditated aggravated murder, charges that, in the state of Ohio, carry the heaviest weight of the law. Psychological experts who followed the case began to peel back the layers of McKee's psyche. This wasn't a case of sudden insanity. This was a textbook, albeit extreme, example of post-separation intimate partner violence. To a narcissist with a God complex, often nurtured by high-stakes medical careers, the ultimate insult isn't just being left, it's being replaced by someone better. Spencer Tepe represented everything McKee was not. He was warm, he was loved by his community for his kindness, and most importantly, he provided Monique with the safety she had lacked for years. To McKee, Monique's happiness wasn't just a betrayal, it was an indictment of his own failure. Experts suggest that for a man used to having total control over life and death in an operating room, the one thing he couldn't control was Monique's heart. So he decided that if he couldn't possess her life, no one would. But as the gavel falls and the legal machinery begins its slow grind toward a trial, the story of Michael McKee becomes secondary. Because the true tragedy of the Tepe case isn't found in a courtroom or a jail cell. It's found in the silence of a house on North 4th Street. It's found in the lives of two young children who will grow up knowing their parents only through photographs and the stories of those who love them. The community in Columbus continues to mourn. They remember the dentist who never turned away a patient in pain and the mother whose laughter could brighten the darkest room. We return one last time to that wedding video from years prior. We see Monique, glowing in white, looking at Spencer with a gaze of total, unadulterated peace. She calls him her Lobster, a reference to the idea that they mate for life, walking claw in claw across the ocean floor. It was a promise of forever that was kept in spirit, if not in years. The documentary ends with a slow, lingering shot of the residence in the 1400 block of North 4th Street. The crime scene tape is gone. The snow has begun to melt, revealing the pavement of the alley where a shadow once walked. As the sun dips below the Ohio horizon, casting long amber shadows across the porch, the house stands as a silent monument to a love that was found, a fear that was real, and a justice that, while necessary, can never truly fill the void left behind. If you found this deep dive into the Tepe case insightful, please leave a comment below. How do you think the medical community should address the mental health and potential God complexes of those in high-pressure positions? For more cases where the trail went cold and the truth was eventually unearthed, click the video on your screen now. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Cold Trail Crimes. Every share helps us honor the memories of the victims and shed light on the darkest corners of the human experience. Until next time, stay vigilant.